budget is a really important part of my job. It's Jackie and myself, Mr. Shelberg, who works with me as my assistant principal. The three of us really are the ones who run the Sierra budget. And so this year is going to look, into the coming school year is going to look a little different. We have been very good at managing our budget and making sure that we're fiscally responsible. There are pots of money, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, that do travel from year to year, and if you spend responsibly and still ensure that students and teachers have what they need, you should have money that lumps over into the following school year, which we have. This is my second year as principal, and we've had money to lump over, and we will again. I already know that based off of kind of the projections that we have of monies we've spent so far and how much money we have left in budgets. The biggest piece that comes to us is actually at the district level. We were given information about 2 weeks ago that the school district will suffer a $5.23 million, somewhere 5.2 or $5.3 million deficit for next school year, which has a great impact on us. So it means that that money has to be divvied out amongst the various departments, schools, etc., to burden, carry that burden of that $5.2 or $3 million. One of the biggest pieces to this, and I will speak very politically correct, is that I don't know if you're aware or not, but one of the biggest pieces to Arizona was was not giving money the way they should to public schools and school districts, and so what happened was there was a lawsuit, and it was deemed that school districts should receive money from the state level. That is about $19 million. 5 million, that was for it to go to us. 5.2 million was actually what they were going to have to reimburse to us, or could reimburse to us. At this point, we know as of now we will only receive 1 million of that, and they are going to take away from another pot of money 2 million. So, while they giveth, they taketh away. So we still are down either way you look at it. So we're trying to figure out how are we going to do the things that we need to do and do them responsibly, and of course with the number one piece in mind is kids, and we want to do what's right by kids. So that boils down to, out of that 5.2 million, is 1.9 million of that has to come from schools. And so that was divvied up amongst the schools between elementary and middle schools. Our portion currently is about $80,000. Now, we are a school that it's approximately $2.5 million to run our organization here at Sierra. A majority of that money comes from positions, people. So you're looking at about 1.4 million of that is people. That's every person in this building, from me all the way down to our support staff members. So as you can imagine, $80,000, while it may seem like a small amount, it's really a big amount for an elementary school to have to come up with. So there are a couple of things that are going on that I want to talk to you about and I want to make you aware of, because there's some things that are different than they have been in the past. So one of the biggest pieces is that typically what has happened in the past, I've been in Kyrie for 20 years, and what has normally happened is we find out we're going to have a deficit. The district says, this is how we're going to make this happen. These are going to be the areas we're going to cut. And they give us our budget and they tell us this is what it is. This is the first time in the 20 years I've been in the district in which they've said, okay, here's how much money we have to cut. Here's your budget, and you have to cut $80,000. So it's what we call site-based, and that's very different. Now we at Sierra here are going to approach it in a team manner. While yes, it is ultimately my responsibility to make sure the budget is managed correctly, the teachers, the staff members are going to be involved in that process, because we know ultimately it impacts them and our students. And so they're going to be a part of that decision making in deciding on how should things look and looking at, which means I have to educate them about the budget because that's not something they've ever had to do before or ever have known about before. Every school is using this process. I'm not the only school doing it, so it's not like it's a Lisa Connor thing. It's a district thing across the board. All schools are going to do this same piece. So let me just talk to you for a minute about our monies and where our monies come from. We have different pots of money that can only be spent in certain ways. So I kind of just made a list that's behind Mitch and Liz here. So, sorry guys. The biggest pot of money is what we call M&O. That's our maintenance and operations. So that's what all the supplies come from. That's paper, that's printing, that's paper, that's pencils, that's crayons, that's markers, you know, all those great pieces of materials that we have. All of our teacher salaries and administrative salaries also come out of that big budget M&O, maintenance and operation. Anytime, every school has a sub-budget, so it's based off of the number of teachers, how many days on average, and so there's a sub-budget that's made, and we spend out of that portion of our money that comes out of M&O. And then K-3 services are also another way that that's our services that we provide for reading interventions for students, what we call Reading Club. And so positions are funded out of K-3 services for that. Then we have something called capital. Capital is those big ticket items. It's the chairs you're sitting in. They're long-lasting things. It's the tables, it's textbooks, because typically textbooks we keep for a long period of time. So it's those big ticket items, and so that's another area, that's another bucket that's used. We have 301 money. 301 money comes from the Proposition 301 that was voted on, geez, I don't even know how long ago now, that was maybe 10 years ago. And there's monies that are reaped from that for schools. We use all of that budget, which is approximately $19,000 for math interventions or math club. That's where that comes from. There's tax credit. That's the money that we ask of you, especially in the month of December, to donate your money to go to tax credit, because then you can put that on your taxes and you're reimbursed for that money that you spend on schools. And that mostly goes to all the field trips that our grade levels do, anybody we have come in, like we had an author, when we have authors come in or we have special presentations come in, that's paid out of that fund or can be paid out of that fund, as well as we do have Mr. Nick, who's outside on the playground at lunchtime. He's paid out of that for lunch duty. And then we have gifts and donations. Gifts and donations, that's a fund that's spent a little bit more easily than any of the other funds, because that's a place where there's not as many restrictions on it. And that gifts and donations, that comes from people who have matching in their buildings. So if you're an Intel and you match and it comes back to the school, that's the fund it goes into. I think when we have our fall and spring pictures, they make a donation back to us from the spring pictures and the fall pictures, and that money goes into the gifts and donation fund. We have a couple community members who no longer have students here, but they still like to make just a general donation to us, and they do that, and it goes into that fund. So that's kind of a quick budget 101 of what very simply what happens during the school year and the school day on a typical school day for our budgets. So I share this information with staff, and we had a big conversation about just understanding budget. Then I have a smaller group that I call my advisory group. That's a group that we meet once a month and we have discussions. It involves one person from every grade level, special area, resource, and a support staff member. So we could talk about the mission of our building and the vision that we have, and all the items that revolve around that. That is the group where this process will start. And we will begin looking at the budget and looking at what are some possible items that we can tweak, and And knowing that we have some money that moves forward from year to year, and that we know we're gonna have money to move forward from year to year, what can we do, what makes the most sense? So I put an orange square around 4 different things. All those monies, whatever's in there, travels forward to the next year. Now, I put a box around M&O. What you need to know about M&O, really the only money out of M&O that travels forward is our supply money. So, you know, and that is around, for next school year at this point, that's around $15,000. And so if we have when we have money left over, like last school year, we had about $5,000 that we were able to move forward into this school year. We anticipate that we're going to probably have another $5,000 this year that we're going to be able to move forward into next year's fund, which will definitely be helpful to us. The tough decisions come where $80,000 is a lot of money. When you really start to break it all down, and we're not going to be able to trim the fat and get $80,000. And so it becomes the task of the advisory committee, who then goes back out to the staff. It's what I call an accordion kind of model, where the small group works, they take it out to the big group, then they move it back into the small group until we come to kind of a consensus of where we're going to be. You are a part of that accordion. PTO is a part of that accordion, the board, you guys, as well as site council, because as we start to narrow down of where we think we need to head or where we need to go, we want to bring to you kind of, this is what we're thinking and this is what we want to do. I will tell you, right now the discussion is around helping to save from $80,000 to $60,000 for us is a district-wide discussion about moving the special area model back from, we have it at 50 minutes this year, back to 45 minutes, which was last year. So that means instead of receiving 50 minutes of service from each special area, your children will receive 45 minutes of service from each special area for next year. That saves us alone in this building $20,000. It saves a lot of money. You wouldn't think by 5 minutes it would be that big of a deal, but it is. And so depending on how many special area people, you take special area people, you divide it by 45, and looking at, how many positions that is, that does mean positions. For some of our staff members, not in this building, but in the district who are newer to the special area. But it is $20,000. That will help all buildings, including this one, save some money. And while it has been nice to have it at that 50-minute mark, we know that this is crisis time and there are certain things we have to do, and that's one of the pieces. So I've said a lot of stuff with a lot of information, and your head may be swirling right now, because I know that's the way my teachers were feeling as we process. Are there questions you have for me?
Is this temporary, by the way? Is this going to be negotiated, or is this it forever, this situation?
Until there are some changes made, we will probably see this, we will see this kind of thing go on where we're going to have to figure out how to manage our budget. And from year to year, it will be a year-to-year decision. So say, for instance, the staff and I make a decision for funding, and as we're going, we're like, ooh, this was not a good idea. There's ways to move money around in the budget after that, especially in the M&O, because it's a big portion of money. But if at the end of the school year next year we say, you know what, that didn't work, we get to go back to the drawing board and build our budget again for the following school year. Do I anticipate we will continue to see this? The $5 million isn't going to magically come back. So this is here for a while.
I think Denise had a question.
Yes.
Yeah, so obviously as a parent, my concern is my kiddo.
Of course.
Class sizes.
Correct.
Core curriculum.
Correct.
And I've heard that the budget's actually going to get much, much worse towards the end of the year.
For Kyrene, I feel like we're sitting in a really good spot. For Sierra, we're sitting in a really good spot, because we have done a good job of managing our budget. And, you know, it used to be that, for the good of the organization, anything you had left over went back to the good of the organization. Whereas, so that meant that some buildings could be irresponsible, and there were no consequences for that. Whereas now, when you are responsible, you're rewarded for being responsible. So one of the big pieces right now that the teachers have come up with, and it's really their thinking, is that we kind of started looking at what does printing look like, how much does it cost to print, where is our biggest bang for our buck of how we can save money right now, so that we know we will have a larger lump of money to move forward. And so teachers are kind of working on some strategies at each of the grade levels of what are the things that we truly need, what are the things we really need copies for, what are the things we really need the paper for, what are the things we can do less of, and what are the things that we can really do without, that are nice to haves instead of needs. So they're doing an excellent job at that, you know, because they know what they need to do, and they know we've had some nice to haves. And so they're really thinking about what makes the most sense, you know, with the number one priority that we went into this with is, this is about kids. That's where we need to be thinking how it impacts kids, how we can cause the least impact for kids. I know as we're just starting to get staffing and look at that, because that's obviously a part of our budget, trying to look at what does that look like. We are not at the top of all the class sizes. You know, when I look at that, I think we will be okay in most grade levels, but we'll continue to monitor that. And that really is not a decision I get to make necessarily. That is a district level decision about how much staffing that I get or don't get. Does that make sense?
I've talked to some parents since we spoke last week, and kind of the number one nitty-gritty question that they've had is, how many teachers does this need? How many people do you have to cut? And I know that that's kind of in flux because you haven't yet been told how many teachers you're actually going to get. Maybe there are ghost teachers that could be cut.
Good point. So, you know, we know that if you look at, if we're sitting at $60,000 instead of $80,000, that is one teacher's salary. That's with the teacher's actual salary and their benefits put together. It's about $60,000. So that would be one position. I do anticipate that we are going to go down. I do think that there's a ghost in there, maybe, that could be utilized. That's, you know, kind of could be a good thing for us. A way to save the $60,000 without really taking a lot out. You know, Mr. Schellberg and I have sat and we have gone through the budget ourselves, and we have looked at, we got these pretty little spreadsheets and little sliders and things where we can look and say, well, if we take this much money, how much impact does that? If we take this much money, how much does that look? So we've gone through at least 5 to 6 different scenarios of trying to figure out how can we get to that mark, that magic mark that we have to get to. You know, and like I told you, it is not just about trimming $3,000 here and $4,000 there. It could be bigger hits than that. So, yes.
I have a question about the tax credit money. Can
Yes.
the tax credit money be used here, or do you have to cut it, or can you make it?
Tax credit is something that we can't cut. It's something that we just get.
No. Can you use tax credit money to fill? Then you cannot.
So tax credit is one of those things that has really strict guidelines around. 301 has strict guidelines, tax credit has strict guidelines, capital to some degree has some guidelines around because it's about long-lasting items. So it really boils down to, it comes out of M&O, and then gifts and donations is our only other space. when I spoke to the board about this, I talked to them a little bit about currently right now in our gifts and donations, we've been working hard in the last couple of years to try to build that. I consider that like a savings account. Because that is the pot of money that it is the easiest to spend out of. And so right now we're at about $8,000 or $9,000 in that pot. That's really a drop in the bucket compared to the grandioso picture of what it takes to run an organization. So I'm trying to, as I shared with the board, I'm trying to be conservative. I don't want to spend too much money out of gifts and donations, because if it's all spent, it's all gone, and then next school year we have the same issue. So I'm trying to use that as a reserve space.
And you can't use that for personnel, correct? I mean, you can't.
Thank you, yes.
And the other, what can you use for positions, I guess, is only the donation, correct?
Yes, one of the biggest pieces to this is that you can't make a donation to gifts and donations and say, please use this for a position. That's a huge no-no. PTO can't say, we'll help you out and we'll give you some money so that we'll pay for lunch duty, or we'll pay for this position or that position. That's not allowed.
And that's a really good point I was gonna point out, because you may be looking at this and going, but our PTO has $37,000 in it. Why can't we just give it? And that was what we said to Mrs. Connor, and that's because there are very strict, there will be ways the PTO will be helping out. We just have to be conscientious about it.
Yes.
But you could move things around, right? So you could move gift and donations to maybe pay for some of the other supplies and then use that money for a position.
Correct.
Yeah.
The biggest issue is the biggest, I can't pay it for teacher salary.
Right. Directly.
Directly.
But you could do it, you could indirectly.
Even then,
Really?
the district has to, the district has, HR has the ultimate say of teacher staffing. Support staff is different. Now, support staff, I can move around. So K-3 staffing, I could make the decision to pay that out of 301 money if I wanted to instead. Or, or we could reduce something a little bit and save some money there, but still provide the services. I just can't pay for a teacher's salary.
If they went back to, I don't know if it actually ever was this, but if they talked about tuition kindergarten, could that tuition go towards it?
We had that big conversation in principal meetings, as well as, I think we even talked about it at the board meeting, is that one of the biggest pieces is that we would be the only district that would be asking for tuition based. And we would be losing enrollment, not gaining enrollment. All the other districts willingly pay for the all-day kindergarten out of their big M&O budget as well, out of the district M&O budget. And so it's not a sacrifice that Kyrene is willing to make, because it could mean the loss of enrollment, which could have even greater impact on our budget.
Can grants come into play at all?
They could at the district level, but not for us or for positions in that manner. It's kind of one of these, somewhat my hands are tied in some ways because of laws and policy and regulations, so.
What as far as, what can we do to help? Where does that leave us in this equation as far as help?
Well, as the staff starts to kind of move through this process and we start to go, okay, here's what we're thinking, here's where we think we want to cut, or can we ask the community, can we ask PTO for assistance to make up for some differences here or differences there, If we decide to cut if we decide to cut supply monies, it means we're gonna need help from you guys. Whether that is in a gifts and donations kind of form of, money, or if that's in the form of, I know you guys were kind of generating some march markers or march or whatever, where we do donations of specific items. I think that's what it was. Where we're looking at, we know we have things that we use a lot of. We use a lot of markers, we use a lot of pencils, we use a lot of paper, we use a lot of lined paper as well as copy paper, you know. We use a lot of hand sanitizer. So, you know, those kinds of things that we typically buy out of the M&O budget to help continue to support inside the classroom. Because yes, you buy supplies at the beginning of the school year, but I'm telling you right now that by a certain point, midpoint in the school year, we're buying more of those supplies through our M&O to help support for the remainder of the school year.
And that's why we're asking like movie nights or family fun night to donate paper. Movie night, I think we're gonna, because we asked Ms. Connor, what are the big ticket items? What do you guys need? And dry erase was one, paper, hand sanitizers, Clorox wipes. And so we thought, well, maybe we'll do like a monthly drive to bring in those things. And, you know, movie night's coming up. So instead of having a fee to come into movie night or family fun night, we're like, hey, how about bring in these things? And that way we can help them offset that budget. And then next year going forward, think of this when it's fundraiser time, you know.
And don't forget about the places you work too, or your families work. You know, a lot of big companies are willing to donate, or they might maybe manufacture things that we can use. Maybe they'd be willing to give some.
The other thing we will post a summary of this on our website, and we will also post, I can't tell you what to say, but I can give you the email addresses of our state legislators if you have an opinion on this you'd like to share with them, so that will be there.
See, what gets me is you're saying PTOs have $1 million in our budget, and they're telling us that we can't use that for certain things, which seems insane.
All about the laws and the regulations.
So you could propose
set.
legislation too,
There
right?
you
And change the laws. Any lobbyists
you
out
had
there?
Oh, I was just wondering, what was the budget of, how much do you spend on supplies a year?
Well, just alone in supplies, we usually have for this coming school year, it'll be about $15,000. And that's based off of our students. So at the 100th, one of the reasons why we celebrate 100th Day is to try to get everybody here to school. So that on that 100th day, that's where they mark how many kids were at school that day, and that is where your funding comes from for the following school year.
So don't miss that day. Don't be sick on that day.
So that's why we celebrate the 100th day of school. I mean, really, let's be honest. Yes.
That'll be a down for me. So what I'm getting from this is if we could come up with the supplies, like I have a huge copier at my office. If you guys needed 10,000 copies of something, I could just have someone do it. Because that's in the M&O bucket, would that then be a teacher's salary or a portion of it? Because if we are supplying you your supplies, are you able to move that into salaries, or is the salary thing just off the charts?
Salary is something that I have, teacher salary is something I have no control over, and I can't take other pots of money and put it in there to make a teacher salary.
But if you had
Not
printing
allowed.
donated, if
Yes.
you had printing donated, then that's more in your M&O that can be used for any one of those four things, right?
Yes.
I'm just, my basic question was, could we save a position? No. So the district's still gonna come down and say, even though you have supplies, all your supplies were donated, you're going to lose a position. And there's nothing we can do about it. Well, that legislature thing, I'm not editing what I send it.
Change it. Like, I'll sign it too, it's perfectly
I'll
fine.
sign it too.
Thank you, yes. I saw.
It doesn't save a teacher's salary, like teacher classroom base, but it can save a staff
Member.
Which
Typically a support staff member.
which some children need or whatever. It does save one of those jobs, which is very important also. So you are still saving a staff member on campus.
I guess I'm looking for the silver lining, like how do we fix it?
Right.
If you need copying, I will copy for you.
Right.
You know, if you need sanitizer, we can all go to Costco
I
right
mean,
now.
in the good old days, we used to be able to finagle that kind of stuff.
Right.
But approximately 20 or so years ago, legislation came into place, and that was not allowed because we had to equalize schools. So a place like Sierra, where we have very active parents, very involved parents, a very active PTO, could do things like that, whereas a place, say like another school in our district, Norte or Niños, where sometimes they struggle to get to get those supplies and needs, they can't do that, and so there's this inequality that takes place, and so they did away with that.
Creative
idea.
accounting.
Yes.
Well, but don't they get Title I?
Niños and Norte do get Title I.
So how does?
But They can pay for support positions out of that, but they can't pay for a teacher out of that.
But let me clarify one thing, that, and correct me if I'm wrong,
Okay.
the 80,000 doesn't have to mean a teacher position. It could be 3 staff positions that we are able to affect by having all the materials paid for.
I
Is
will
that
tell
correct?
you no.
Why?
That won't get us to the mark.
True.
Yeah, they might say.
But some of these others, 20,000 with this and 15,000 here, I mean, it all works towards the end point.
It's hard to do, but yes.
So from a community standpoint, what's our corporate support like as far as, Safeway or all the places we all go and spend a lot of money here? Do we have support donations from corporate organizations to help us out?
Well, we do get things back that go to, that go to PTO. There is one piece, I think it might be Target.
Target goes to you.
Goes to us.
Okay.
And that's the money you spend at Target that comes back to us in the same form that when you go to Safeway, it comes back to PTO. And then we do have people who work in certain corporations where they do matching. So if you give 400, they'll give 400, those kinds of things. So we do have a little of that, but it's not like, hey, we're gonna give you $10,000, we don't have anything like that.
We did get that one nice $10,000, or five to us from Rosewood Homes.
Yes, last year we did get a nice donation from Rosewood, the builder over here. They gave us $5,000 and they gave Altadena $5,000 for building, and they do that whenever they move into and build in a community, which we used for math materials last year. Yes.
What about, for example, Green Book? Because the teachers are always saying, have the kids do half an hour per night because it's so expensive. All those programs that you look in, all those icons that they have, are those in danger or not?
No, because a lot of our technology, and that's at the district level, but that's a whole other pot of money. You guys voted bond-wise to support technology, and so a lot of our technology stuff that will not be impacted because that money can only be spent on technology. No different than the front office remodels, all that came out of a bond, and it can only be spent on upgrading and safety. And so we can't touch that, we can't use it for anything other than building and remodeling the front office. Yes?
Will you talk again about the specials, knocking it down to the 45 minutes? Would then that, I know there's teachers that share schools and everything, so would that ultimately be, that could be an answer?
That could be an answer, and I think what had to happen was every school had to have the same discussion, and then all the teachers across the school district had to vote on that. So I think we're coming close to a resolution of what the final answer will be to that. I just from talking to various schools and teachers and things, it looks like it is going to be the 45-minute model that we're going to go with, which does help us with $20,000. I'm just waiting for the final email that says, yes, indeed, that's what's happening.
As far as class sizes,
Yes.
are there state guidelines or district guidelines in terms of certain grades and what the absolute maximum kids per teacher?
There are guidelines. In the upper grades, it is 30 and 31 students on the upper end.
That's
Fourth
3
and
through
fifth
5.
grade.
That's like
Fourth
fourth
and
and fifth typically. Third grade I think is 28, and then K2 is 26 or 27. I want to say that's me. Now,
What did you say the fourth and fifth grade was? Sorry, 30?
maximum 30, 31.
Which you're at, right?
In fourth grade this year we're at 30
My son's class had 31 kids. I mean, 2 moved out, so there were 29, but there were 31. I thought that
to
was
start. Yeah.
high, so that's the max.
I mean, I will tell you, I taught fourth grade for a long time, and I typically had 29 or 30 students every year. That's a very standard number across the district. Yes, at the back. That's okay. She wants you, go.
So when she was talking about cutting it to 45 minutes, where did the $20,000 come from? Is it a shorter school day?
No, this actual savings comes out of, there's less teachers in the special areas.
So what are
So,
the special areas?
so that would be music, art, PE, and library. And it would be our newest employees, so the employees that were hired for this school year would typically be the employees that would be what we call RIFT, reduction in force.
And there'd be more likely to be split, like for example, Mrs. Kilgard is housed completely here, but she might have to next year have 2 days here and 3 days at a different school.
Yeah,
And
like
same
right
with all
now
the
we
other
have,
ones.
we
Mr.
have,
Huntley.
in PE, we have Mr. Huntley travels out for a day, and we have Mr. Aiken that travels in for a day from another school. You would continue to see that.
Why, I don't understand
How does
why
that save
is.
money?
Yeah, you still got a PE teacher.
Yeah, right. Part of that has to do with making the most of our money. That's really what it boils down to for the district, because there are special areas have to have so many sections taught in a day and in a week, and so they try to make it so that, so say like we have 28 teachers. We would be, for a 45-minute model, we would be at the max, and they wouldn't necessarily have to travel anywhere. But if we're at 26 and somebody has 28, then we might have our person travel over to the other school to cover the other two sections. It's very confusing. I don't make that schedule, thank goodness. That is at the district level. They make the decision about how to compact schools together, how to build the schedule so that we get the most bang for our buck. Yes.
Can I assume that there will be no increase in salaries?
I know we're trying to maintain the salary increases that we gave for last school year. One of the things, we were frozen for approximately 7 or 8 years. One of the things they did for the first time was to some of the employees like myself who have been in Kyrene a really long time, they gave a bonus to, because we had lived through that 7 or 8 year period of no raises.
Do they get like a percentage stipend every year?
So you got a percentage stipend. I know that they really want to stay competitive, and one of the things they do want to do is they do want to give a cost of living increase to teachers. So, you know, it's one of those rob Peter to pay Paul kinds of things where we want to continue to value teachers, and we don't want teachers to leave, you know, because, you know, we want to stay competitive with competing districts, as well as at the same time have to deal with the other pieces of the deficit that we have.
Other districts should be facing similar issues, right?
Yes. You know, you have some districts who are up in Phoenix who huge cuts, gigantic cuts in their front office staff.
Was that the Dysart thing
Dysart,
last
you know,
month?
huge cuts in class size, you know, making class sizes about 40 kids in a classroom.
And they wonder why kids go to charter schools.
Yes. Yes.
Does it tell you what, you put 40 kids in my 3rd grader, I'm out.
Right. And I don't want to put 40 kids in a classroom because that's just not good for kids. That's not living by the belief that we have in this building. So, and I would fight to the nth degree to make sure that didn't happen.
Piggybacking off of that, how much of this is being affected by this charter school model that Arizona has? You know, that
It does have an impact. I'm not going to lie to you.
It seems like that's the design. Do they just not want us to have public schools?
That would be a question you could put in.
You could put an email to someone.
You're gonna go on
What's the charter school model? The fact that they exist, and they get public funding.
What's enrollment like in the district overall? I mean, I know Sierra's enrollment, just as I've seen in the 5 years that I've been here, has been going down.
Inched down.
Yes. What's the district like?
You know, we have seen a trend, and this is a trend over about 5 to 7 to 10 years. You know, it started with, we expanded as far as we could expand. You know, we're landlocked, and so, you know, you can only grow so far. And we grew far, and we grew fast. You know, when I was a first teacher in a Kyrene school, my school was over 1,000 kids. We were packed to the gills, and you know, we used every inch of a building to do the things we needed to do. You know, I had 6 to 7 teachers on a team with me. And so, that's a large team. So we became landlocked, and then the other piece to that is that our families moved into Kyrene and they stayed. And their kids grew, they graduated, but they stayed. And so we didn't have a new quote-unquote crop of families moving into the district because of that. So that's kind of where that trend started. Then you add in charter schools and that dynamic, and that really changed the way public education looks. And so that does have an impact. We're constantly trying to figure out a way to show people that we do offer and do have the things that they're looking for, and trying to also morph ourselves as well into what's currently the 21st century and what a 21st century learner looks like. And so that's why you see the addition in Kyrene of the other specialty schools, leadership school, dual language school. It looks like there's going to be a fine arts and academic school coming. I'm missing
KTA.
KTA, thank you. I was there. I should know that. The traditional school. Because you have all these other places that are being successful with other things, so trying to meet the needs of our Kyrene families as well as families who want to come in and have open enrollment in Kyrene too.
At the October meeting, I see here, you discussed the safety and security changes for the front office
Yep.
next year. Is that still gonna happen, or is that gonna be affected by the budget?
No, as I shared, that is a whole separate, that came from a bond that's solely for building purposes. So it is only money we can use for building and for safety, and nothing else. So they put a lot of restrictions on a lot of pots of our money. So it's not like this one big great pot that we can use however we want to use, unfortunately. So I'm gonna come back to you, I'm gonna come back to board, I'm gonna tell you where we stand, what are we looking at, what are the things, and then we're going to ask something of you. I honestly don't know what that is quite yet, because we need to decide on cuts of what can we cut, where can we cut, and where do we know we can, get some support from you. So right now, my spreadsheet, as I shared with you, that I have, is kind of a moving target a little bit until we're settled on staffing, and I know exactly where we are with that. There's the 45-minute model versus the 50-minute model. All those things have impact on the budget. Until I have a solid budget and I know exactly what it is, then we can work on it. I do not like to do things more than one time. So I don't want to have my teachers go through this process and then they change what the budget is, and we have to do it all over again. That's such a waste of energy. So I want to do it once and I want to do it right.
What's your time frame or deadline? I know we're quickly approaching.
Well, that's the other fun piece to this, is that they have asked that by the end of February that we have our budget ready to go, because of HR has to do their process of beginning to make contracts for the following school year, because we like to try to have our contracts out to teachers early so that we know what teachers are coming back, what teachers are not coming back, so that we can try to get a jump on the hiring process and get the best of the brightest. So we're right now our target is February 27th, but I'm waiting on the districts.
I apologize if you already.
No, not a problem.
What do you mean you're gonna be asking us for things?
So if we come back and we decide that we need to cut $8,000 out of, the only way we can make the budget work is to cut $8,000 out of M&O supplies. I may come back to you and ask the community, can you help support us in some form with that? Yes.
Is the district doing anything to help lessen the financial burden on the schools? For example, are they looking at their administrative positions and streamlining their?
That's a great question.
Yeah. Really, really good question. They are cutting $3.2 million out of their district-line budget. I know for a fact they are already, they've made a decision, or somebody's retiring, who has a larger salary in the organization. And so that person will be retiring, and they will not replace that person. So, that doesn't take care of 3.2 million, obviously, but, we joke, but,
I need a new job.
But, yeah. But we know that that's a piece of that. There will be cuts made at the district level as well.
How much does the new Common Core testing and assessments, how much cost does that increase the schools in the state?
I really don't know the answer to that. I don't know how much it costs us. I actually think it probably in some ways saves us some money because it's not paper pencil, it's all online. And so everything's done that way, and we already have all the technology. We're light years ahead of a lot of other school districts in that regards, as well as we've already had kids take tests online. There are some places that will have the computers, but they've not actually asked their kids to take a test before on the computer. So their first exposure will be the Arizona Merit, which is a scary thought process. So, I don't know how much that costs us as a district. Good question. Heavy topic.
Okay, any other questions? Anything?
PTO meeting is
Oh, no, we're not done with that yet. Sorry.